Good morning. I'm very happy to be here and thankful for the invitation. I'm going to talk about the supply side of this industry, of anchoveta. Anchoveta or anchovy is the source for about 75% of the oil that you use. I believe that sustainability is not only a biological problem, but it has to do mainly with incentives for human behavior. I'm going to talk, since we have to look at human behavior, I'm going to talk about Peru first and try to get some lessons that can put this problem in perspective. Peru is in the west coast of South America. We represent 0.4% of the world's population, 0.25% of world's GDP. Therefore, we have a per capita income that's below the world's average. We're a small developing country with an average income well below the world's average, about 2/3 of the world's average. We are striving to grow. Where should I point this? We have the most productive marine ecosystem in the world. Peru's landings of fish represented 8% of the global fish landings for the period 2000 to 2013. This is comparable to China. However, all our landings come from our fishing done in our exclusive marine zone. And anchovy, as you know, is the largest single stock fisher in the world and is the major source for omega-3. I want to tell you a little bit about other natural resources in Peru. Non-renewable natural resources, we're very rich in mining, minerals, oil, gas. We're the third largest producer of silver, the third largest producer of copper, the seventh producer of gold. This has brought a lot of growth to Peru in the last 15 years. However, the mining sector in Peru is under attack. New projects are fiercely opposed by the population. They have become what I call socially unsustainable. Since 2010, more than 15 investment projects worth $67 billion have not been developed because of social opposition to them. We also have a very rich endowment of renewable natural resources, tropical forests, for example. We have the second highest area of natural forests in Latin America, the 11th in the world. Despite competitive advantages in Peru, such as land, water, and climate, we are not exploiting this potential. Deforestation is a big problem in Peru, and we don't have serious forest plantations in the country. And the explanation for this is government failures that hinder private investment. Let's look at our hydrobiological resources. As I said, we have a very rich marine ecosystem. Are we taking good care of our hydrobiological resources in Peru? We are in the case of the anchovy fishery. However, in other fisheries, we have serious problems. The tragedy of the commons. We are overexploiting some of our other resources in the marine ecosystem. And this is due to a weak institutional framework. If you've read Professors Asamoglu's and Robinson's book on Why Nations Fail, you'll know about the huge role that institutions have in development. In Peru, as a developing country, we have a weak institutional framework that needs to be strengthened. Another problem that I see is the lack of development of the aquaculture in Peru. We have a fantastic climate and fantastic water supply in order to develop aquaculture. However, we have done very little. And as an economist, what I worry is that we're not really exploiting our hydrobiological resources at the level that we should, and doing it in a sustainable manner. We are, as I said, in the case of anchovy, but that's the major exception. This is an example, I would say an extreme example, of how not we should be doing things. It's the case of the giant squid or Humboldt squid. This is our second largest fishery. We land about 400,000 tons per year. These landings are larger than all of those of France or Italy or Holland. But due to regulations, we've limited the exploitation of the Humboldt squid to the artisanal fleet, which has a very small scale and a technology which is outdated. Therefore, we exploit or we land less than 50% of our maximum sustainable yield estimated by our scientific authority, IMARPE, which is a very serious authority recognized worldwide. The reason behind this is poorly designed regulation, ineffective supervision, and lack of enforcement. All of those reflect weak institutions, lack of funding. This is another case, just as forests, where inadequate government intervention is destroying value or not helping generate value. Let's talk about the Peruvian anchovy fishery. As you can see here, there's a downtrend in the production of fish meal and fish oil coming from anchoveta. Is this bad news? I would say not necessarily. It may be due to changes in ocean conditions. The Humboldt Current that hosts the anchoveta is a very variable ocean. And ocean conditions and the biomass there fluctuates greatly from one year to the other. Probably this downward long-term trend shows a change in regime. Probably we are going into a new 10 years or 20 years of different water conditions that would allow a lower catch of anchoveta. We don't know, but it's a possibility. In any case, what we are doing is taking care of anchoveta and securing the supply. This reflects a more precautionary stance of IMARPE, and that's good news. We are securing this fishery, the sustainability of this fishery. We have learned from the past. This is a story of anchoveta landings since the 50s. Overfishing in the early 70s led to a collapse that lasted for around 20 years. El Niño, as you can see, affects also the capacity to fish in Peru. And what you see here is variability, but you also see the costs of overfishing. We have learned our lesson, and what you're seeing in the last 15 years is that we're taking more care about sustainability. But the question is, are we doing enough? And can we do it alone? My message to you is we need all the help that we can get. And we need all the help that we can get from clients in markets. Fishing regulation around the world addresses usually 5 questions. How much can be fished? That's the total level catch. What can we fish? Juveniles, bycatch. When? This is fishing seasons. Where? Fishing zones. How? Regulations having to do with gear. Who? Who has access to the fisheries? In Peru, since we believe that we are very creative, we've invented a 6th question, or 7th question, is what for? And we differentiate fishing regulations depending on what we do with the fish once it's been landed. This what for whether it's for direct human consumption or indirect human consumption, has created a segmentation between fleets in Peru. And the margins, the profit margins of these fleets differ significantly. This generates perverse incentives and fosters corruption. And on the end, I believe it threatens sustainability. Right now, the industrial fleet cannot fish for direct human consumption, despite that they have a quota, but they cannot allocate part of their quota for direct human consumption. It sounds stupid, but that's what we have. How can we go towards securing a sustainable fishery and an efficient fishery? I think that we should deal with 3 criteria. The first is sustainability. Sustainability, we need to strengthen our scientific and regulatory bodies and strengthen law enforcement. This is easier to say than to do in a weak institutional framework. This is necessary, but clearly it's not sufficient. We need to talk about efficiency. We need to maximize the resource rent of the largest fishery in the world. I believe that we have to allocate property rights. We have done that in the industrial fleet. We need to do that with a medium-sized fleet and artisanal fleet. We need to unify regulation and eliminate fleet segmentation. Equity, we need to make this socially sustainable. We need to learn from what's happened in mining. We need to talk about access in a transparent way, and we need to talk about sharing the benefits. And of course, who pays the costs for managing these fisheries? What we need to do in order to secure this, implement these 3 criteria is to increase our budget in science and resource monitoring. We need to improve our regulations and enforcement, and we need stronger institutions. But who's going to fund this? Where's that funding going to come from? From the fishing sector, or is the fishing sector going to request resources from the national budget? If so, we're going to be competing with health and education. Clearly, I believe that the cost of managing our fisheries should come from the rent that's generated in the fisheries sector. I want to talk about regulatory reform and institutional reform. With regard to regulatory reform, as I already said, regulations based on what is done with a fish once it's landed should be eliminated. Regulations for different fleets should be unified as much as possible, since they aim at the same resource. For example, today we don't have a total allowable catch for the artisanal fleet or the medium-sized fleet, while we do have a tag for the industrial fleet. That fish is the largest part of the resource, but if we have incentives that create incentives that generate circumvention of the regulations, and we may have a problem since the small fleet is increasing the volume of its fishing, and we don't have a total allowable catch for them. The regime of ITQs that has proved to be very successful in the case of Peru should be extended to the non-industrial fleet. Fishing royalties should be modified in order to adequately finance the management of our fisheries. We need to redraft the sanctions code. Sanctions are not very effective. It takes sometimes up to 8 years to pay the fines that you're supposed to pay. That's, in practical terms, the sanction code is very ineffective. And we need to eliminate regulations that destroy values, such as those in our second largest fishery. Institutional reform, they should be aimed to strengthening our scientific and regulatory institutions. We need to eliminate interference between national and subnational governments, increase the budgets for scientific and regulatory institutions, enhance the independence of scientists, increase timely access to information and decisions, reduce discretionary decisions. We should prefer rules over discretion, and foster stable rules of the game that will foster private investment. We know this, and we have known this for years. And this is where you come in, the role of new export markets. When I started working in fisheries in the mid-1990s, I remember a client that was very proud of what he was doing, and what he was doing, and he showed me, was that he was burning fish oil in order to use it instead of bunker oil, instead of gas. And that was the story with relative prices and human behavior. That would be ridiculous from a business point of view. The increased demand for fish oil has led to really high prices, which I think will be sustained in time, given the profile of demand, and the fact that you won't be seeing higher volumes of fishing coming from the anchoveta fishery. And the second thing is that these markets have some concern for sustainability. To the extent that this concern for sustainability is translated into demands to producers to really care about sustainability in Peru and to Peruvian authorities, I think we could benefit all from having a more sustained effort towards sustainability. I've talked with a firm, one of our largest firms, who's present here. I would love to see more firms like TASA in Peru. It's a very responsible firm in terms of their business, but of caring about sustainability. Not all our firms behave like TASA. We need stronger authorities, and we need a mandate from clients in order to secure sustainability in this fishery. I believe very much in eco-certification as an instrument that will strengthen our efforts towards sustainability. And I think that that's something that can come from this part of the world. My final remarks, our recent record at securing a sustainable anchovy fishery is pretty outstanding. It has been recognized in a lot of scientific work. However, this is not true for other fisheries, and we should do it for other fisheries. We need regulatory and institutional reforms. Social and equity considerations need to be brought into the equation. We need to learn what's happening in mining. We need to take into account what's happening in mining. We should fund the efforts to secure sustainability, to diversify our fisheries with royalties coming from the fishing sector. We cannot compete with public funds aimed at nutrition, health, or education. We were endowed with the most productive marine ecosystem in the world. All of the stakeholders, including consumers abroad, should foster that we exploit our hydrobiological resources in a sustainable, equitable, and efficient manner. I believe that markets such as those for omega-3 will sustain high export prices in the foreseeable future, and that these markets should care more for resource sustainability. I've heard a lot of talks about the demand side. You need to also worry about the supply side. This is an opportunity for all of us. We need a predictable and enforceable regulatory framework, and we should work on that. There's an opportunity. We have elections in April. We'll have a new government. We have the opportunity to transform the framework in which the fisheries are exploited in Peru. We need to do more R&D, more strengthen IMARPE and our scientific work. And finally, the time horizons of investors and current stakeholders need to be extended. If we secure sustainability, we will have a profitable long-term business in our hands. Thank you very much.